Hey friends, Gary here. As some of you guys might already know, I am a big fan of Micro Four Thirds camera system. I think it really suits my need as a hobbyist enthusiast photographer who are looking for a small but capable camera system. The compact size and the lighter weight of Micro Four Thirds cameras and lenses really sets Micro Four Thirds apart from other camera systems, offering portable photography solution to get superior image quality and much better photography experience compared to just using a smartphone's camera. In terms of image quality, although Micro Four Thirds won't be able to match high-end full-frame or APS-C camera system, it can still provide plenty of horsepower needed to capture stunning photos. Today, I'm going to share my favorite Micro Four Thirds lens setup to maximize Micro Four Thirds benefit and help you to capture literally anything, and I mean anything. Landscape, portrait, street photography, travel photography. Hopefully by watching this video, you can come up with your own perfect Micro Four Thirds lens setup for your needs. And if you are not using Micro Four Thirds, don't worry, I hope that you can still find some inspiration from the setups that I will share today and apply it to your own camera format. First setup, I call it the duo budget lenses. So the priority of the setup is to use the kit lens that already come with most of Micro Four Thirds camera, whether it's the Panasonic Lumix 12 to 32mm kit lens like what I have right here, or the OM system Olympus version, the 14 to 42mm. And then you'll just need to add a budget telephoto lens to add more flexibility into this setup, and you'll be able to cover almost anything. The main lens for this setup will be the 12 to 32mm kit lens or the Olympus 14 to 42. Being able to zoom from normal wide to mild telephoto can give you enough flexibility to cover most of your needs. One thing that I need to point out is that kit lens with Micro Four Thirds are quite special because they're not really compromising that much in terms of image quality. You can still get plenty of sharpness, detail and contrast, unlike some other camera format where they compromise with their kit lens. However, if 32 or 42mm is not enough for you, you can always add this guy. This is my Panasonic Lumix 35 to 100mm f4 to f5.6 budget mini telephoto lens, one of my favorite lens ever, and this can zoom into 100mm, giving you the option to go in closer for that detailed shots or distant landscape photos. You can always replace this guy with the budget 40 or 45 to 150mm Panasonic Lumix or Olympus lenses. They are also great options if you don't mind something larger. So with this setup, you'll be able to cover anything from normal wide 12mm all the way to telephoto 100mm. This is very flexible. Again, you can capture almost anything: landscape, portrait, travel photography, street photography. However, sometimes people find that 12mm on the kit lens is not really that wide, so you might need an extra wide angle lens. That's fine, we have plenty of options that will fit this setup perfectly. For example, the Laowa 7.5mm f2, ultra wide, large aperture, small and compact size. The only drawback of this lens is that it's a manual focus only. Or over here I have the Panasonic Leica 9mm f1.7, still large aperture, still ultra wide, still very compact, and the price doesn't really cost you that much. It'll blend right in with this particular budget setup. Anyway, before I move on to the next lens setup, one thing that I need to mention on the budget lens setup is that both of these budget lenses, the kit lens as well as the mini telephoto lens, they don't have large aperture, so you might suffer a little bit in terms of low light performance and the ability to get extreme background blur. Next setup is the all prime lens setup. This is one of my favorite, by the way, and the priority with using all prime lens on this particular setup is to add more fun and enjoyment into your photography process. Photography isn't just about getting the best result, it's also about having fun with your equipment, and using all prime lens can add some tactility into the process of doing photography, as well as adding more mindfulness into the photography process, because you have to choose which lens is the best for any particular composition. One drawback with using all prime lens is that you might have to change lenses frequently. The main lens that you will use frequently on this particular all prime lens setup is something with a normal wide focal length. My particular favorite right now is the Panasonic Lumix 14mm f2.5. It is wide most of the time, but it's not too wide where you start to get some distortion and weird effects on your image, but you can still get close with this lens and get some detailed shot, something that's a little bit more quote-unquote zoomed in, although you don't really zoom with this lens. It's just flexible and versatile. However, if you don't like this guy because the aperture is only f2.5, you can switch to something like the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7. You get slightly larger aperture, which is better for low light performance as well as for getting more background blur. It is slightly larger but not that much heavier. It's better construction as well, and the difference between 14 and 15mm is negligible. This is still very much providing you with the same focal length and angle of view of the 14mm. If you need something slightly more zoomed in, you want better subject isolation, you want slightly better background blur, you want to be able to have that kind of classical street photography focal length, then I would suggest something like the Panasonic Lumix 20mm f1.7. Compared to the 14mm, you get, again, better subject isolation. Everything just pops more, you get more of that 3D effect. I think this is a really nice lens for that purpose. And if you don't like the 20mm focal length, there's also the Olympus 17mm f1.8 or the Olympus 25mm f1.8 or the Panasonic Lumix 25mm f1.7. Plenty of options. They all have pretty similar focal length to the 20mm. 17 is more towards the wide angle if that's your preference, but 25 is even more zoomed in compared to the 20mm. So again, plenty of choices for this mid-zoom kind of focal length. For a mild telephoto lens, as well as to get more background blur and a mini portrait lens, I would suggest Olympus 45mm f1.8. It is so small, so lightweight, you can get plenty of background blur with this guy. Portrait looks really nice, particularly with the 45mm, and also for close up, for distant landscape, this guy can work as well too. You can definitely replace this with Panasonic Lumix 42.5mm f1.7 if that's your preference. The focal length is very similar, but the Panasonic Lumix has image stabilizer. Or if you want to go crazier, then I would suggest something like the Olympus 75mm f1.8. You get more zoomed in focal length, you get crazier background blur, you get crazier shots. I mean, everything with the Olympus 75mm will look more dramatic and punchier. Definitely, if you need an ultra wide angle lens for this all prime setup, either the Panasonic Leica 9mm f1.7 or the Laowa 7.5mm f2, both I already mentioned previously, will be also good options for this particular all prime setup. Next setup is the Holy Trinity setup featuring all f2.8 lenses. So the priority with this setup is definitely giving you the best of what Micro Four Thirds has to offer. All of the lenses again has large aperture of f2.8, and that makes capturing things easier, especially if you want to get more background blur or to get better low light performance. For me personally, I don't really enjoy using the Holy Trinity setup. Obviously, I prefer smaller and lighter gear, that's always my philosophy. But sometimes people need this larger, heavier gear because they provide professional performance and quality. So maybe for some of you guys that need this kind of requirements, the Holy Trinity setup will make more sense to you. Anyway, the main lens that you will use frequently with this setup will be something like this guy right here, Olympus 12 to 40mm f2.8, or the Panasonic Lumix 12 to 35mm f2.8. This kind of lens will have the ability to zoom on the most important focal lengths, covering normal wide all the way to mild telephoto with just one single lens. And again, with that large aperture, you'll be able to get more background blur and lower light performance with this guy. If you need to zoom in, then something like the Panasonic Lumix 35 to 100mm f2.8 will make a lot of sense. This is like a 70 to 200mm lens in the full frame terms, but again with Micro Four Thirds it is smaller. You'll be able to get that distant landscape shot, portrait shot, close-up photography, that kind of stuff with just this one lens. Or you can also use the Olympus version, which is obviously much bigger than this guy but offering slightly more zoomed in telephoto focal length, which is the 40 to 150mm f2.8. For the ultra wide option of this particular setup, when you need an ultra wide angle lens for that classical wide angle landscape composition, or if you are doing wedding photography indoor, you wanna cover everything, or if you're doing event photography and you're in a tight spot, you just wanna be able to capture everything in a single frame, I would use something like this guy right here, Panasonic Leica 8 to 18mm f2.8 to f4. Absolutely fantastic image quality. The problem is that if you zoom in to 18mm, the aperture will close down to f4. For me, it's fine, but for some people they would like something that has constant f2.8 aperture, then maybe something like the Olympus 7 to 14mm f2.8 will be a great option as well in this category. Next setup is what I call the Landscape Duo, featuring the Panasonic Leica 8 to 18mm f2.8 to f4 that I just mentioned on my Holy Trinity setup, as well as the Panasonic Lumix 35 to 100mm f4 to f5.6 mini telephoto that I mentioned on the budget setup. So for landscape photography, I think these lenses work well. I used this particular setup when I was traveling to New Zealand a few years ago. I got some great shots. I think this setup is pretty agile, it is pretty flexible, and it is pretty efficient. I got some stunning shots with just these two lenses and nothing more. Now you might think, hey Gary, anything from 18 to 35mm is missing, right? Because you don't have something right in the middle to cover these two lenses. And yeah, that is right. And you might think that it's a restriction. However, from my personal experience, when you're doing landscape photography, you don't feel like you're going to miss out that much between 18 to 35, because most of the time with landscape photography, you just need an ultra wide for that classical wide composition, and you'll need a telephoto to get that close up distant landscape photography shots. And yeah, anyway, if you need to cover that particular 18 to 35mm focal length because you're not confident leaving that big gap on your setup, you can always add something like the Panasonic Lumix 20mm f1.7, and I think that'll do a great job nicely. Last but not least, I call this setup my capture everything setup, and the priority with this particular setup is to be very flexible, no lens changing, just one lens that can do it all, and that means using super zoom lens. My particular favorite for a super zoom lens for Micro Four Thirds is currently this guy right here. This is the Panasonic Lumix 14 to 140mm f3.5 to f5.6. Wonderful lens. You can zoom out to 14mm normal wide focal length, and then you can zoom in all the way to 140mm telephoto focal length. all with just one single lens. Fantastic in my opinion. Got great photos with this guy, it's just excellent. Now you might be thinking, hey Gary, it's a super zoom lens, there's always gonna be compromise, right? From my experience, not really. The images taken using this lens are always sharp, detailed, contrasty. It just looks so great. Many keeper shots are taken using this lens, so no real compromise except the fact that it doesn't have large aperture. Now, if you're not happy with the Panasonic Lumix 14-1 40mm, there are plenty of other super zoom options in micro four thirds. Olympus 12-100mm f4. People kept telling me it's a great lens. I personally never tried it, but I think it's a good option with that larger f4 aperture. Or if you want more extreme focal lengths, you can try the Olympus 12-200mm f4 to f6.3. I think that is very impressive. I got a chance to try it a few years ago, got great result with it. I'm quite happy with the performance of that lens as well. And that wraps up today's video. So that is all for the micro four thirds lens setup combinations. Hopefully these setups can inspire you to come up with your own lens setup that hopefully you'll enjoy using to take photos on the field. Anyway, please comment down below. Let's have a little bit of a discussion. What is your favorite lens setup personally, whether you're using micro four thirds or other camera system? Also, if you have any question, comment down below as well. I will try my best to answer them. Also, don't forget to support my channel by liking this video, sharing this video, subscribing to my channel down below. And if you want to support my work even further, consider using the affiliate links on the description below. Use the super thanks button to make a small donation to my channel, or purchase my travel photography course ebook called Simplifying Travel Photography, link also on the description below. Thank you, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.